Welcome back to the Topwater Podcast. I am Justin Ellis. I am the host, and it has been a minute. It has been a while. It's probably been, I don't know, like 8 months or so, Yeah, I ended up, just taking a step back, taking a break from the podcast. It was one of those things where I just kind of felt like I was kind of putting a little bit too much onto my plate as far as like trying to do different projects and trying to put my finger in a little bit too many pots, trying to do 2 different podcasts and trying to do, trying to make baits and some other stuff and trying to fish tournaments. And it was one of those things that it got to the point to where I was kind of getting hard. It was hard for me to actually keep up with all the stuff that I was trying to do. So instead of actually doing like all that, I ended up just taking a step back, taking a break from everything. So that way is maybe I can kind of get a little bit better perspective of what I'm actually trying to do, or maybe just really kind of get back down to basics of what I'm passionate about. And I think that's really what it came down to. Actually, it is what it all came down to was what was the passion. Was I trying to do videos to get likes and views and all this other stuff? And I think that's something that it starts to kind of, in a way, get in your head and start to kind of consume you a little bit, to where it's like, it's not getting the shares and likes and stuff like that is that you kind of would hope. And then just kind of like, oh, well, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? And in reality, it's just like, it's one of those things that's just an indicator. That's all it is. It's all it is just some sort of indication of whether or not people are sharing your stuff or not. It doesn't mean that it's not good or it couldn't be better or it's just absolutely terrible or whatever it is. It's just something that, it is what it is. You can't really help, whether or not somebody's, going to watch your stuff. So I just kind of took a step back and just kind of reevaluated and really just kind of found what perspective I'm trying to look at this with. And the reality is I'm passionate about the outdoors. I'm passionate about fishing. I'm passionate about, I don't do too much hunting, but, it is part of the outdoors. And that's something that I do enjoy doing, even though I don't do it very often. I'm actually more into fishing than I am hunting, but I'm still going to be getting into some hunting, definitely this fall. But it really just kind of came down to the fact that what I needed to do was to figure out what perspective I needed to look at it through. What lens do I need to look at it through? I had this idea that, all that stuff mattered. And it really kind of doesn't. It doesn't matter as far as the motivation to do it, and at least that's how it mattered to me, or how I was perceiving it. Like that stuff was kind of like a secondary sort of thing. In reality, the priority is the fishing. The fishing is the priority. The passion for the outdoors, that's the priority. That's what I want to convey, and that's what I want to come across with. And that's what I want to maybe inspire some of you guys and gals to actually do the same thing, to go out there and go fishing and catch some bass and maybe have some fun. Maybe not take it so seriously. And I think that was a big issue. It's like I was taking it too seriously. I was taking myself too seriously, and I just need to take a step back and really just kind of figure out why I'm doing it and what do I want to do with it. And, because I've been wanting to do videos as far as doing fishing videos and maybe some outdoor sort of type of videos. And I just, I wanted to start doing that, but I just had too many little things that I was trying to do all at once. I was trying to make baits, and I was trying to do the podcast, and I was trying to do the other podcast that I had with my buddy. And, I was also trying to make videos on top of that. And it was just kind of like one thing after, it was just all kind of compiled onto one. And in a way, there's sometimes just not enough time in the day in order to get it all done. And so you kind of have to pick and choose of what you actually really want to do. So I decided, hey, I'm going to take a step back and figure it out. And I really kind of came to the conclusion of I want to do more of like cinematic sort of style of fishing videos, because those are the type of videos that I actually like. Those are the videos I enjoy. And even some of the like vlog videos that I've actually seen, some of my favorite parts are the little cinematic short little segments on those, instead of just the whole vlog sort of type of fishing video, you know. Even though some of them are interesting and I still do watch, you know, some of them, but, you know, I'm just, in a way, it's not my style, you know. That's kind of really what it comes down to. That's not the lane that I'm in, or it's not the lane that I want to be in. So I've actually kind of like shifted gears and actually started making more like cinematic sort of style videos, and trying to make it to where it's, you know, a more shorter format. You know, I've been trying to get down to like that sort of like 5-minute mark, you know, trying not to go past like 5 minutes, you know, just that, like, that seems about right for like a small clip, just a small video, just some good shots, some hook sets, some catching some bass, you know, and there you go. You know, getting different angles, getting creative with it, getting, you know, building platforms to where I can get overhead shots on my own, you know, different things to where it's just, you know, it really sparks that sort of creative side when it comes down to like filming, instead of just, you know, here's a camera on my chest. Now I'm fishing. Now I catch a fish, you know, and that's just it. And then also, I don't want to be just running around with a camera just in my own face talking to it. You know, it's just, I already got the podcast, I already got that. So I really don't need to be walking around talking to a camera by myself. You know, it's just like, yeah, it's not something that I necessarily want to do. Now, it doesn't mean that I don't want to walk around and talk about fishing, because I do want to walk around and talk about fishing. I love walking around talking about fishing. But now, since I'm getting back into it, and since I'm, you know, this is the first podcast, you know, kind of like back, you know, I've been out just, you know, a couple times. I went out this last weekend, and it was kind of weird. You know, it's like, it's kind of one of those, it's one of those years to where spring didn't necessarily start until like later on, until like almost like April. It was weird, you know, because it was still cold temps at night. Heck, even this month, I think we had temperatures down into the 30s, like 39, something like that, you know, and it's May. You know, it's like, I can't remember the last time that we actually had 30-degree temps in May. It's been a while. You know, I'm talking like since I was a kid. So we're talking like almost like 20 years ago sort of thing. So, yeah, it's been strange, because at this point in time, I figure like, you know, we should be kind of wrapping up the spawn. It should be post-spawn. You know, there should be like grass and lily pads and all this sort of fun stuff, to where, you know, there should be good frog fishing on lily pads, good punching, that sort of type of stuff. But it just kind of seems like this year that's kind of been like pushed back, because the last time I went out, the lily pads were only like, I don't know, like maybe like 4 inches across. I think they call them like silver dollar pads or something like that. I don't know necessarily great terminology, but it's close. It's close enough. You know, that's kind of it's close enough. We'll just take it. But yeah, I mean, it's just been kind of weird. You know, it seems like the spawn should have happened earlier, but it didn't. And so now everything's just kind of pushed back, which I just wonder how that's actually going to affect the spawn and actually affect like bass numbers and bass population. Because I would figure, you know, if it's you know, if the spawn happens a little bit earlier, it gives them more time to grow until it like actually hits winter time. And then they would actually be at like a size to actually be able to like feed on other fish and stuff like that, instead of like, you know, if it's later. I just wonder how that's going to affect like, you know, this year's you know, yearling bass, how they're going to go into winter and how they're actually going to survive and actually get through that that sort of, time. Because, because I'm pretty sure that, they were spawning just by the way that they were hitting the baits. Now, it was kind of hard to tell because I couldn't see whether or not they were on beds or anything like that. It was high water, so it could have been just that they were up on the bank just because, the high water, all the water coming in. But, you never really know because you can't really tell. If the water clarity is not really there, you can't really tell whether or not they're actually spawning or not. So I'd assume that these ones were actually spawning because the way that they would hit the bait, they would just pick it up, and, you would set the hook and it would just be nothing there. It's almost like that the fish just picked it up by the ends and that was it. Every time that would happen, or anytime I would pull bait across, they would just bash it. They wouldn't actually like inhale it. They were just like basically just trying to like spook whatever it was off. So I was wondering in my own head at that time whether or not these bass were spawning. I kind of think that they were, because a couple weeks earlier I was catching really just fat males, pre-spawn males. Like that's what they were. They were not post-spawn at all. These were big fat males. And unfortunately I never hooked into a big old female, but other than that, I could tell that they were definitely pre-spawning. This is like in April, late April. So, that just kind of begs the question, like how's this going to actually affect the bass population going into the winter? Is it going to actually reduce the numbers of bass? Because, that would kind of suck going into next year or whatever, that sort of thing like that. So I don't know. It's just been a weird one. It's just been a weird spring, and I've even talked to other fishermen, and they were even talking about how like some of the white bass who normally spawn in like early March, April, something like that, like March, April, somewhere around there, we're spawning like late April, and it seems like everything just is kind of pushed back. So like right now, like I said, this would be normally the time of year to where I'd be punching, I'd be, ripping through grass, maybe with a square bill or, with a chatterbait or something like that. But right now I'm just kind of like trying to figure it out, just trying to like, okay, are we, what's the actual deal here? So I think really the strategy, for moving forward and moving into like maybe like this, next time I actually go out, which is going to be kind of rough because we got a lot of stormy weather just coming in. So it's going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to actually get out there and film and not ruin cameras and get the shots that I need to get and actually do fishing, and actually like fish well and not have to like, oh, my camera's going to get wet. Oh, so like that's going to be interesting to see. That's going to be very, very interesting to really check out. And I'm not really sure how that's going to really just play out. So what I'm thinking is I'm probably going to end up fishing like a lizard or something like that in shallow water or something like, like I'm going to find some flats. That's what I'm going to be looking for. I'm going to be looking for flats that have like rock bottom, hard bottom, and I'm just going to be looking for like drainage into that, so that's really kind of what I'm going to be like targeting, is that sort of like type of area, instead of like trying to find an area that's like close to deep water, but also it's like, it goes shallow, deep, that sort of thing. I'm going to be looking for more like spawning areas and less just like summertime, protected fishing areas that, normally bass would hang out in, kind of like weed edges that are close to deep water. So that's really just kind of the I guess like the meat and potatoes of it all. And, I think the lure choice is really going to come down to it. And I think a lot of it's just going to have to be based on water clarity. I'm just going to have to use probably darker colored baits. Like, if I'm going to go with a lizard, I'll probably go with a, like a black lizard or something like that. I might try to go find a yellow one since it might be, spawning. That's something that I've actually heard from a couple different people, that yellow really works well in the spawn. I don't know. Like, I don't know why. That's going to be something that I'm going to have to like look up and check out and figure out why it is. But, it's kind of like the bass that I caught this past weekend. I actually caught it off of a floating worm. And so that was pretty cool. It was the first time I ever really used a floating worm. It was the first time I ever used that sort of technique. And it was actually pretty interesting because I had cast out and I was reeling in a underspin with I think it was a Kitech paddle tail. And, I could see, it was shallow enough water to where I could see the bass come up and hit it. But it didn't like inhale it. It just seemed like it just like T-boned it, and that was it. Had no interest of like actually eating it or anything like that. And so, like, of course, I tried to set the hook, and of course I whiffed, but I threw it back in there. Well, not the paddle tail. I ended up throwing that floating worm back in there, and I was just twitching it along, and then just, I can see it come up again. And it just came up out of the opposite way and just nailed this thing and inhaled it. And I just kind of took like a second or two, and I just set the hook. I just reeled down, boom. And I ended up getting it. It was probably about like 1.5 pounds, maybe. It was definitely a male. So that was kind of like really the highlight of the whole day. Other than that, I mean, we're talking about whiff after whiff after whiff after whiff after whiff. It was a lot of just missing. And I think a lot of it is they were just picking up my creature bait and just by the ends of it. Maybe if I would have switched to like a jig with an open hook, or maybe if I would have switched to, something like a smaller sized bait, something that they would actually be able to inhale, that would have been probably a little bit better option. But I really didn't have the tackle with me. I just kind of threw a couple things in the kayak, threw my camera equipment in there, and just hit the water. It's just kind of one of those, what I get is what I get, and what I film is what I film, and this is what it's going to be, and I'm just going to work around that. And, and it ended up not being so bad. It ended up being a pretty good day overall, even though I only caught one. I mean, I was getting bites left and right. I just couldn't connect. And I think that was the reason why, is they were just picking it up by the ends. They weren't actually inhaling it. They weren't eating it. They were just moving it. So that's kind of like my almost like indication that we're probably in the spawn time, Also, like, I think possibly it may have had to do with the hook that I was using, which I know like a lot of people are going to, like, some people are going to be like, oh, well, I like their stuff. But, I'm kind of like half and half about it. Some of the stuff I like, some of the stuff I don't, the Guggen Squad stuff. I ended up getting a mystery tackle box. My girlfriend actually bought me one for my birthday, and I was like, oh, sweet. And it had some hooks in it. Well, I ended up using one of their hooks, and it just seemed like I could not hook into the fish. And I was kind of thinking it might have been the hook, but I'm also kind of thinking it might be the spawn. So it's like I'm not necessarily like going to just bash the hook just yet. I'm just not going to do it because I just haven't used it enough. But I almost think it was partially that, because once I switched out hooks, I actually hooked into something, or like I hooked into something with a different type of hook. Because after that, I kind of like the bite kind of dropped off a little bit. The sun started coming out, so I think they just kind of went deep. And I since they switched positions on me, I just kind of had to refigure, I had to readjust, find the bass again. And I ended up finding a kind of this like shallow water bank that was shaded. It had wind blowing into it. So it had a lot of like murky, muddy water. So that's kind of like more what I'm used to fishing, is just muddy, murky water. rather than a little bit clearer sort of type of water. And plus there was less current and there was less wind. So there's less me having to adjust with the paddle and that sort of thing, which, you know, it's just kind of a part of kayak fishing is you're just going to have to make adjustments, you know, with your paddle. You're going to have to adjust your boat position or something like that. You know, if you have an anchor, use an anchor. But, you know, I didn't bring my anchor. I only had my, I think it's like a Yak Attack pole, you know, the big, I think it's like 6 foot, 7 foot, something like that. But basically it's a giant stake that you can stake through your anchor wizard and just, you're good to go. You're just stuck there. Which, I mean, I like using that thing because it's just, it makes it easier to anchor off in shallow, muddy water. That's a lot of the times that's where I'm fishing is muddy water, basically mud bottom and that sort of type of stuff. You know, I haven't really been fishing a lot of like hard bottom rock, you know, almost like Bear Lake. You know, Bear Lakes as far as like, you know, no vegetation and that sort of type of stuff. I've been really just trying to find, you know, vegetation, grass, you know, cover, you know, heavy duty stuff that you can just punch in, you rip through grass with the chatterbait, that sort of type of stuff. That seems to be like the type of fishing that I usually do more often. You know, also, you know, using a frog around like lily pads and around grass lines and stuff like that. And that's usually the type of fishing that I try to do. But see, just like I said, this year it's just been kind of weird. The grass hasn't been there. So, you know, you just kind of have to make adjustments. You have to make adjustments on the fly because sometimes you expect it to be something that it's not. And, you know, what are you going to do? You're just going to pack up your stuff and go home? Well, I mean, that's an option, but that's not something that I'm going to do. And that's not something that I'm actually like, you know, I'm not apt to do something like that just because it's just, I went there to fish. You know, I took the time to load my kayak and to drive all the way out there. Just because I don't see grass and lily pads doesn't mean I'm going to go, well, this is not my type of fishing, so I'm going to go ahead and go home. So, you know, you just make adjustments and you just kind of just stick to your guns as much as you can. Maybe, you know, change out some tackle where you can, but if you kind of come with a limited arsenal, then, well, you know, you just kind of have to make, you know, lemonade out of, you know, lemons. So, you just do the best you can, you know, just trying to find the bass where you can, just trying to find them, you know, any sort of like anything, just anything and everywhere just to find bass and to get them to bite. But once I actually did start getting them to bite, you know, I started figuring it out. It's like, okay, well, they're shallow. They're real shallow. Like, you know, like almost to the water's edge sort of shallow, you know, to where they're looking at the water's edge. And that's how I was getting them to bite, by tossing up and hitting right at the edge of the water and working it in. And that's how I was getting bites. So maybe I was coming across beds. Maybe I was just coming across bass that were following the water up. It could have been one of the two. It could have been both, you know, so, but I really can't say or verify whether it was or not because of the fact that I couldn't see into the water. There wasn't enough water clarity for me to actually see any beds. It was just too muddy. There's just been too much, you know, rain here the past few days, and we had a couple of nice days, and I just kind of expected that, you know, but I was also expecting the grass to be higher. So with all that being said, this has been fun. You know, this has been fun getting back into the saddle again and talking about fishing and, you know, getting back here and actually doing this sort of type of thing again. And, you know, I'm going to be trying to make these podcasts, you know, weekly. I'm going to be trying to get these things out every single week and, you know, just doing my due diligence and, you know, going fishing, filming, getting everything done. And it's going to be fun. And hopefully you guys will see some of the videos that I'm going to be putting out. They, like I said, I'm going to be doing more like cinematic sort of style of videos. They're going to be, you know, shorter. I'm not going to be doing some of the like 15, 20 minute videos. I'm going to be trying to really just streamline those things and get them down to like 5-10 minutes. Yeah, I mean, 10 minutes is long. Like, I mean, if it's a 10-minute video, then I was whacking bass. Like that's what it's going to be, you know, and that's kind of the sort of the type of videos that I want to kind of start putting out there. So look forward for that to be coming out. You know, I'm still working on this one now. I've been filming, been combing through the videos and just trying to figure out, you know, how the pieces are all just going to kind of fit together. But other than that, you know, I'm just going to be doing this. I'm going to be doing this podcast, and I'm just going to be getting this and cranking this thing out just every week. Just, 20, 30 minutes of sitting down talking about fishing, you know, and just getting back to it and being dedicated about it and just being passionate about the outdoors. Because at the end of the day, that's what I'm passionate about. That's what I love doing, is going fishing. I love being in the outdoors. I love being on the water, and it's just, it's great and it's wonderful. And I hope you guys are getting out there. I hope you guys are catching some big bass. And if you're not catching some big bass, I hope you guys are out there having fun and enjoying yourself on the waters. Just make sure to be safe. Wear your life jacket. You know, of course, you know, like the weird, stupid PSA sort of things. You know, wear your life jacket. So just make sure that you're out there being cool, being kind to each other. You know, we're all fishermen. We're all out there enjoying the outdoors together. So, you know, just do you. It's fun. It's great. Well, you guys have a good one, because I sure am. And I'm going to get working on some videos and working on some stuff. And you guys have a awesome day. So I'll see you out on the water. Peace.